Okay, so inflation. Everyone's talking about it right now. Prices going up, your groceries cost more, your rent's higher, everything's more expensive. And you've probably heard the explanations. Too much demand, supply chain issues, corporate greed, pandemic stimulus checks. But here's what they're not telling you. Inflation isn't an accident. It's not some natural economic force. It's not bad luck or greedy corporations or your stimulus check. Inflation is theft, created intentionally by the Federal Reserve. And it's the biggest transfer of wealth from poor people to rich people in history. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how they do it, who benefits, who loses, and why your dollar today is worth 4 cents compared to 1913. If you watched my last 2 videos on how banks work and the Federal Reserve, you already know the system is rigged. This is the third part of that story. This is how they rob you. Let me explain. Okay, first, what is inflation? The simple definition. Inflation is when prices go up over time and your money is worth less. A burger cost $2 in 2000. Now it's $6. A movie ticket was $5. Now it's $12. Your coffee was 25 cents in the 70s. Now it's $5. That's inflation. Prices up, money worth less. But why does this happen? Here's the explanation they give you in school. Imagine a village with one market. Everyone buys their food and clothes there, business as usual. Then one day the government shows up. They're worried about the economy. So they do 2 things. First, they tell the banks to lower interest rates, make it cheap to borrow money, encourage people to take out loans and spend. Second, they literally drop off a giant pile of cash for everyone in the village. Now everyone in the village is like, sweet, I'm feeling rich. I got all this new money. So they go to the market and start buying way more stuff. That electric bike they couldn't justify before, now they can afford it. Everyone's buying everything. The store owner's like, this is great for business, but wait, he's running out of bikes, running out of everything, because all these people have extra money and they're buying way more than usual. So what does the store owner do? He raises prices. And that's inflation, okay? So that's the story they tell you. More money floating around, people spending it, businesses raise prices to match demand. Sounds reasonable, right? Natural. Accidental, just how economies work. Wrong. Here's what they don't tell you. Who gave the village all that extra money? The Federal Reserve. Remember from my last video, the Fed is a private company owned by the biggest banks in America. It's not federal, it has no reserves. It was created at a secret meeting on Jekyll Island in 1913. And the Fed has one power that no one else has. They can create money out of nothing, not print it. That's just the Treasury making physical bills. The Fed creates it digitally. With a keystroke, they type numbers into a computer and boom, new money exists. And who do they give this new money to first? The banks. The Fed lends money to the banks at low interest rates. The banks then lend it to everyone else at higher rates. The banks make the spread. So when they say the government is stimulating the economy or the Fed is lowering interest rates, what they really mean is the Fed is creating new money and giving it to the banks first. And here's the key. When you create new money, you don't create new value. You're not making more stuff, more houses, more food, more products. You're just making more dollars. So what happens when there's more dollars but the same amount of stuff? Each dollar is worth less. That's inflation. And it's not an accident. It's not supply and demand, it's the Fed printing money. Okay, so you might be thinking, wait, sometimes inflation happens because of supply problems, right? Like the pandemic. Factories shut down, supply chains broke, not enough stuff to buy. Sure, that can cause prices to go up temporarily, but that's not inflation. That's a shortage. Real inflation. Long-term sustained rising prices. That only happens when the money supply increases faster than the production of goods and services. And who controls the money supply? The Fed. Every single time you see long-term inflation, it's because a central bank printed money. Every single time. Okay, so if inflation is created by the Fed printing money, the next question is obvious. Who benefits from this? Because somebody's getting rich. And it's not you. Here's how it works. When the Fed creates new money, they don't just drop it from helicopters equally to everyone. They give it to the banks first. The banks get the new money when it's still worth the old value, before prices have gone up, so they can buy assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, while those assets are still cheap. Then the new money flows through the economy. It goes to big corporations who borrow from banks, to Wall Street, to hedge funds. These people get the money second, still early, still before prices rise much. Then it trickles down to regular people. Your paycheck, your job, your business. By the time you get the new money, prices have already gone up. The dollar is already worth less. This is called the Cantillon effect. The people closest to the money printer benefit. The people furthest away get screwed. So who benefits? Banks. They get free money from the Fed at low interest and lend it at high interest. Rich people. They own assets. When the Fed prints money, asset prices go up. Stocks go up, real estate goes up. They get richer. Corporations. They can borrow cheap money and buy back their stock or buy competitors or expand the government. They can borrow money cheaply to fund wars and programs and whatever they want. And who loses? You. If you have cash in a savings account, you're losing value every single day. Your money is being diluted. If you're on a fixed income Social Security or pension, you're getting poorer as prices rise, but your income stays the same. If you're working class, your wages don't keep up with inflation. Your boss gives you a 3% raise, but prices went up 8%. You just took a 5% pay cut. Savers get destroyed. Workers get destroyed. Anyone holding cash gets destroyed. But people who own assets get richer. And here's the thing, rich people know this. That's why rich people don't hold cash. They hold assets, stocks, real estate, gold, Bitcoin, businesses. Poor people hold cash because they don't have enough money to buy assets. They're living paycheck to paycheck. So inflation is a wealth transfer from poor people to rich people. And it's intentional. Okay, so you might say, hold on. I've heard about different types of inflation. Demand pull inflation, cost push inflation. What about those? Yeah, let's talk about them because they all come back to the same thing, the Fed printing money. Demand pull inflation. This is when demand for stuff goes up, but supply stays the same. So prices get pulled up by demand. Example, everyone wants to buy houses, but there's only so many houses. So house prices go up. But why does everyone suddenly have money to buy houses? Because interest rates are low. Because the Fed printed money and made borrowing cheap. Cost push inflation. This is when the cost of making stuff goes up, so businesses push prices up to maintain profit. Example, oil prices go up. Now it costs more to transport goods, so prices go up. But why did oil prices go up? Partly because everyone's buying more stuff. Because they have more money. Because the Fed printed it. Built-in inflation. This is when prices go up, so workers demand higher wages to keep up. Then businesses raise prices to cover higher wages. Then workers demand even higher wages. It's a cycle. But what started the cycle? Prices going up in the first place. Because the Fed printed money? Monetary inflation. This is when there's just too much money in the economy compared to goods and services. And who creates the money? The Fed. See the pattern? Every type of inflation traces back to one thing. The central bank creating money. They'll tell you it's complicated. Supply and demand. Global markets. Geopolitics. Corporate greed. But it's not complicated. More money. Same stuff. Prices go up. It's that simple. Okay, so here's where it gets even worse. They lie to you about how bad inflation actually is. You've heard of the Consumer Price Index, CPI. That's the official government measure of inflation. They tell you inflation is 3% or 5%, or whatever the CPI says. But the CPI is rigged. Here's how it works. They take a basket of goods and services, bread, milk, eggs, rent, healthcare, whatever, and they track how much those prices change over time. Sounds fair, right? Except they get to choose what's in the basket, and they change it whenever they want. If the price of something goes up too much, they just replace it with something cheaper. They call this substitution. Example, steak gets expensive, so they replace steak with chicken in the basket. Now the CPI doesn't show the real increase in meat prices. Or they use something called hedonics. If a computer costs the same as last year, but it's faster, they say the price actually went down because you're getting more value. So even though you're paying the same amount, they report it as deflation. It's complete nonsense. And they exclude food and energy from core CPI. You know, the things you actually buy every day. Why? Because food and energy are too volatile. They mess up the numbers. Translation. They're going up too fast, and we don't want people to know. Real inflation, the kind you feel when you go to the grocery store or fill up your gas tank, is way higher than the official CPI. Some economists estimate real inflation is double or triple the official rate. Your rent goes up 10%. Your groceries go up 15%. Your healthcare goes up 20%. But the CPI says inflation is 3%. And they tell you you're imagining it, or you're bad with money, or you need to budget better. No, they're lying to you. And here's why they lie. If they admitted real inflation was 10 or 15%, people would panic. They'd demand higher wages. They'd pull money out of banks. They'd lose faith in the dollar. The whole system would collapse. So they lie. They manipulate the CPI. They tell you inflation is low and transitory and under control. Meanwhile, your purchasing power is getting destroyed. And this has been going on for over a century. Remember when the Federal Reserve was created in 1913? At that time, the US dollar was backed by gold. You could exchange your dollars for actual gold at a fixed rate. This kept the government and the Fed from printing too much money, because they couldn't print more dollars than they had gold to back it. But in 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard. He said, "We're not backing the dollar with gold anymore. It's just paper now, backed by nothing." And what happened after that? The Fed went crazy. They could print as much money as they wanted, with no limit. And they did. Since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, The US dollar has lost 96% of its value. 96%. A dollar today buys what 4 cents bought in 1913. Think about that. If your great-grandparents saved $1,000 in 1913 and you inherited it today, it would be worth $40 in purchasing power. They stole 96% of it through inflation, and it's accelerating. Most of that value loss has happened since 1971 when we went off the gold standard. This is the biggest theft in human history, and most people don't even know it's happening. They think prices just naturally go up over time. Movies used to cost a nickel, now they cost $15. That's just how it is. No, that's theft. The Fed printed money. Your dollar lost value. They transferred wealth from you to the banks and the government and the rich. And they're still doing it right now. So what do you do about it? First, stop holding cash. I know your parents told you to save money in a piggy bank or a savings account. That advice made sense when the dollar was backed by gold. It doesn't make sense anymore. If you save $1,000 today, and inflation is 8% real, inflation not CPI in 1 year, your $1,000 can only buy what $920 could buy today. You just lost $80 by doing nothing. Saving cash is losing money. So what should you do instead? Buy assets. Rich people figured this out a long time ago. That's why they don't hold cash. They buy stocks. When the Fed prints money, stock prices go up. The S&P 500 has averaged about 10% returns per year over the long term. They buy real estate. When the Fed prints money, property values go up. People with mortgages actually benefit from inflation because they're paying back loans with devalued dollars. They buy gold. Gold can't be printed. There's a limited supply. It's been money for thousands of years. When the dollar loses value, gold holds value. They buy Bitcoin, similar to gold but digital. Limited supply. 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist. The Fed can't print more of it. They buy businesses. When the Fed prints money, businesses can raise prices, revenues go up, the business is worth more. The rich get richer, not because they're smarter or work harder. They get richer because they own assets. And when the Fed prints money, assets go up. So if you want to protect yourself from inflation, stop saving cash and start buying assets. Now, I'm not giving financial advice. Do your own research. Understand what you're investing in. But here's the principle. If the Fed is going to keep printing money and they are then holding cash, is the worst thing you can do. Let me give you an example. Imagine 3 people in 2014. Bob, Jack, and Tony. Bob invests $1,000 in Apple stock. Jack invests $1,000 in gold. Tony saves $1,000 in a savings account. Fast forward to 2024, 10 years later. Bob's Apple stock is worth about $9,000, 25% average return per year. Jack's gold is worth about $1,800, 6% average return per year. Tony's savings account with 1% interest is worth $1,104. But wait, we have to adjust for inflation, real inflation. Let's say 8% per year average over that decade. Bob's actual return after inflation, about 17% per year. He made $7,000 in real purchasing power. Jack's actual return after inflation, about negative 2% per year, but he still has about $1,500 in purchasing power. He lost a little, but not much. Tony's actual return after inflation, negative 7% per year. His $1,104 can only buy what about $500 could buy in 2014. Tony lost half his money by saving it. This is why rich people own assets and poor people have cash. And this is why the gap between rich and poor keeps growing. Okay, so let's connect the dots. In my first video, I explained how banks work, how they use fractional reserve banking to create money out of nothing, how your deposit of $1,000 becomes $10,000 in the economy through the money multiplier. In my second video, I explained the Federal Reserve, how it's not federal, how it's owned by the banks, how it was created in secret, how it charges us interest on our own currency, and now in this video, inflation, how the Fed prints money, how that devalues your dollar, how it transfers wealth from you to the banks and the rich. It's all one system. The banks create money through loans. The Fed creates money through printing. Both dilute the value of your dollar. Both steal your purchasing power. And who benefits? The banks, the government, the rich. Who loses? You. And here's the thing they don't want you to understand. This is intentional. They tell you inflation is complicated, supply and demand, geopolitics, pandemic, corporate greed. But it's not complicated. They print money. Your money loses value. That's it. And they do it on purpose because it benefits them. The government can borrow unlimited money to fund wars and programs without raising taxes. The banks get rich lending money they created out of nothing. The rich get richer because their assets go up in value. And you get poorer because your cash loses value and your wages don't keep up. It's a scam, and it's been running for over 100 years. Okay, so let's connect the dots. In my first video, I explained how banks work, how they use fractional reserve banking to create money out of nothing, how your deposit of $1,000 becomes $10,000 in the economy through the money multiplier. In my second video, I explained the Federal Reserve, how it's not federal, how it's owned by the banks, how it was created in secret, how it charges us interest on our own currency. And now in this video, inflation, how the Fed prints money, how that devalues your dollar, how it transfers wealth from you to the banks and the rich. It's all one system. The banks create money through loans. The Fed creates money through printing. Both dilute the value of your dollar. Both steal your purchasing power. And who benefits? The banks, the government, the rich. Who loses? You. And here's the thing they don't want you to understand. This is intentional. They tell you inflation is complicated. Supply and demand. Geopolitics, pandemic, corporate greed. But it's not complicated. They print money. Your money loses value. That's it. And they do it on purpose because it benefits them. The government can borrow unlimited money to fund wars and programs without raising taxes. The banks get rich lending money they created out of nothing. The rich get richer because their assets go up in value. And you get poorer because your cash loses value and your wages don't keep up. It's a scam. And it's been running for over 100 years. So here's the truth. Inflation isn't a natural economic force. It's not bad luck. It's not corporate greed. It's not your stimulus check. Inflation is created by the Federal Reserve printing money, and it's the biggest wealth transfer in history, from working people to banks and government and the rich. Since 1913, when the Fed was created, the dollar has lost 96% of its value. They stole 96% of your purchasing power through inflation, and they're still doing it. The CPI is rigged to hide how bad it really is. Real inflation is way higher than they tell you. And the only way to protect yourself is to stop holding cash, start owning assets. Stocks, real estate, gold, Bitcoin, businesses. Anything that can't be printed, because the Fed is going to keep printing. The government is going to keep borrowing. The system is going to keep running. And if you're holding cash, you're going to keep getting robbed. Now you know how it works. You know who benefits. You know who loses. The question is, what are you going to do about it? If you want to understand the full picture, watch my videos on how banks work and the Federal Reserve, because this is all connected. And drop a comment. Did you know inflation was created by the Fed? Or did you think it was just natural? Hit subscribe, because we're exposing the financial system one video at a time. I'll see you in the next one.